Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar jointly hosted by the American Bar Association, International Labor Section, and the ANADE, which is the Mexican Association of Corporate Lawyers. Thank you so much for being there, giving us your time and joining us this afternoon or morning. Okay, my name is Mercedes Balado. I'm founding and managing partner of MBB Abogados in Buenos Aires, Argentina. In this opportunity, I'm representing the Labor and Employment International Committee of the American Bar Association. And we have been lucky enough to be joined on this first webinar by a tremendous and amazing group of international speakers. As the topic suggested, we are going to discuss the latest human resources trends and regulations in a very hot topic, which is inclusion and diversity around the world. So the presentation will take like 60 minutes of interactive discussion among us, and then we'll go to some Q&A. We'll leave for that around 20 minutes. So please feel free to write your questions in the question box down the screen so we can address them later on the panel discussion. Okay, with no further ado, I'm gonna present my co-moderator, amazing speakers here. So my co-moderator is Hugo Hernández Ojeda from Hogan and Lovells. I have the pleasure of knowing Hugo for many years and be friend of him, as likewise with some other panelists here. I have to read because he has so many titles and positions, so I don't remember them by heart. So Hugo, of course, leads the employment, pension, social security office in Mexico and Monterrey for Hogan and Lovells. He's actually member of the executive committee for the Mexico office, member of the steering group of the Latin America practice group in Hogan and Lovells, member of the diversity and inclusion committee, where he impulses great initiatives in Mexico. He's also a member of the International Bar Association, the American Bar Association, the Mexico Bar Association, of the XBHR group, and he's very active towards academically in writing, speaking in several publications and conferences worldwide. Well, there I have my also very good friend, Susan Sholinsky. She's from New York. We met when we were kids. We just ended law school and we bonded forever. I'm so proud, I'm so happy she's here with us in this panel. Again, I have to read all this, Susan. Susan is, of course, partner of Epstein, Becker and Creel in the New York office. She's the vice chair of the Employment, Labor, and Workforce Management practice at Epstein, Becker and Creel, where she provides employment advice and counsel for clients across the US. She serves on the firm's board of directors and as vice chair of the firm's Diversity and Professional Development Committee. And for several years, Susan has also been New York co-chair of 50-50 Women on Board's Global Conversations and Board Diversity. Thank you, Susan, again. From Mexico, we have the one and only Sofía Bautista. She has experience in the labor and employment field for at least 15 years. She's head now of the labor and employment practice in Creel Abogados, a Mexican firm, full service. She's singled out by several legal reviewers, such as Legal 500, Chambers and Partners. She's an active member of the American Bar Association and of ANADE. Thank you, Sofía, also for joining us. And also from Mexico, but actually based in California, we have the pleasure of the presence of Angelica Najera. She's head of the HR area in Uber. So, but Angelica is a lawyer as well. She got her degree in Mexico and she did several LLMs and courses. I have to read this again, so sorry, I don't remember everything by heart. He owns a certificate in conflict resolution by Cornell University. She's certified workplace mediator and trainer in conflict resolution. She decided to pursue new challenges in the HR field by leading Uber's Latin American employee relations team based in Mexico City. And recently, she decided to move to Uber's headquarters in San Francisco, California, to manage their global conflict resolution program. Thank you, Angelica, again. From Spain, Madrid, we have Jose Antonio Segovia Rodriguez. Not only he graduated in Madrid as a lawyer, but he also did it in France, and he has an LLM from UK. So he actually is a very international lawyer. He is experienced in the labor and employment field. He was working with Gary Guest for several years, and 1 year ago, he decided to join ANADE and Overy in the employment and labor area. So let's get the ball rolling. Thank you again. I said thank you like 100 times because I really appreciate your presence here. Okay, this hot topic that is being hot for so many years. Not that long ago, I remember that the concept of diversity began to be heard and developed, mainly towards promoting equality in terms of gender. Equality in the workplace, equal pay, equal treatment, equal opportunities. We read a lot, heard a lot, and wrote a lot about specifically the equal pay among genders, women, men, so much struggle there, so many things to do, so many things that have done, breaking the glass ceiling. Many measures have been taken to raise awareness, first of all, and then to repeal any discrimination act or violation act in terms of gender from the workplace. But now the question is, how we reach, and we're going to discuss mainly these two topics here, although we have the related ones, but the concerns are like, how we reach the desired goal of being an equal pay treatment in terms of gender around the world. At which stage are we there? How we are any close to the dream of equal pay? And secondly, in terms of diversity and inclusion, has the labor scenario developed enough in order to be very active, including not only gender minorities, or I don't like to say minorities, but like in terms of gender, can we achieve anything in terms of the inclusion of LGBT communities, race, disability, age, and so many other like groups that we are concerned about. So let's get the ball rolling in this and listen to our specialists in the different jurisdictions, wondering and being aware of what stage we are in terms of equal pay and in terms of inclusion and diversity of other groups. So I would like to address Susan and to provide us an overview of how things are in the US, please.
Sure, thanks, Mercedes. So, I will begin with a sort of equal pay issues. Equal pay, there have been equal pay laws on a federal level for a long time here in the US. And as you suggest, they really started just with gender. And after the federal law was passed, many states passed their own, and we have many different laws in the US. It's not just federal law. States and even cities have their own laws as well. So many of those states passed their own equal pay laws over the years. But probably 5 or 6 or so years ago, many of the states started broadening their own equal pay laws to do things like including additional protected categories. So they don't just deal with gender, right? So they deal with race and national origin and other protected categories as well in many states. Some of them changed the geographical scope of who could be compared with one another, right? Is it only in the same facility? Is it in the same geographical region? Is there not even a geographical region? Some states like California have eliminated that. So arguably somebody could even be compared outside of the country with respect to, the equal pay rules. The damages have been increased under a lot of these laws. The statutes of limitation have been expanded. So that was sort of the first movement with respect to our equal pay laws. Then many states started passing salary history bans, right? So under these laws, you can't ask people as part of the hiring process what they're earning at their current employer. And the concept here is that if there has been historical discrimination against women, against others in their pay, basing their pay at your company on their lower compensation would really be just perpetuating the past discrimination. So the thought is, if we don't ask and we just offer what we think the job is worth, perhaps that will address that issue as well. A new trend here in the US is now salary range laws. So many states and cities are passing laws whereby you cannot post a job without also posting the salary, the compensation levels for those jobs. So,
interesting. That's interesting, because that used to be like confidential information that was only provided to you when you were offered the job.
Exactly. So it's really a very new concept, and employers here in the US are having a very hard time accepting the fact that they're going to have to be doing this. And I would say, the other movement, which I'll just kind of talk about very briefly, is board diversity, right? So a couple of states have passed rules on board diversity, requiring, for example, that a certain number of women be on corporate boards for companies in those states, or perhaps underrepresented communities, individuals from underrepresented communities on those boards. So interestingly, California's laws on those two topics have been around for a little bit and have just been overturned by the courts. But we have information that at least the women on boards rule will be appealed. Many states have not gone so strongly as to mandate a certain number of individuals on these boards, but maybe have put reporting requirements for boards, and just listing how many diverse members of their boards that they have. And NASDAQ has just created a board diversity rule as well. So there's really a momentum there in terms of diversity here in the US.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. Jose, when we were discussing, there was so very interesting information that you were sharing with us towards Europe and the different approaches taken by the different countries. Can you please tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Mercedes, and thank you for the invitation to the webinar. So I think that before analyzing what are the measures that have been taken by the governments in Europe, I think that there are two data that needs to be highlighted. Gender pay in Europe is 15.7%. And when it comes to pension retirement, the gap is of 30.1%. So there's a real gap in the European Union, not only in salaries, but also in social benefits that are obtained by males and females. So basically, I don't know if you know more or less how it works in the European Union, but basically the European Union usually publish directive or recommendations, and then the members of the European Union needs to adopt internal regulations to adopt and to align to the regulations that are being set for in Brussels or in the European Union. So at the European level, we are talking a lot about gender pay and gender equality pay, because that's the real issue nowadays in Europe. We are not at the stage of saying that diversity is like the key issue right now, because that's becoming a hot trend, but that's not the key area of what we are focusing now. So basically, the European Union published in 2017 what they call the European Union Action Plan for 2017 to 2019. That was like the first step that was taken to say, listen, countries that you are a member of the European Union, you need to do something regarding equal pay. And then the second step that was taken by the European Union was the publication of the gender equality strategy for years 2020 to years 2025. So basically now in 2022, we are in the middle of that strategy. And when we have a look to the European regulations, then we have to take a look to what the European countries are doing. So I have more or less, also I'm based in Spain, and I'm an expert on what's going on in Spain, as we work in Overy and we are quite international. We know more or less what our neighbors are doing. So, for instance, in the UK, since 2017, all the companies that have a workforce of more than 250 employees need to publish the gender pay gap that they have in the company. And that's quite interesting because British people, I have to say that they do things quite well because they have a website that is called, quite original, genderpaygap.service.gov.uk, where you can have a look to the name of any company in the UK, of any company that is registered in the UK, and you have the information of the gender gap pay that they have in that company.
So that information is open to the public, like anybody can see it. So let's say that you're a candidate to a job position and you wanna know what the stage of the company that you're interested in. Okay.
That's interesting, and I think that for lawyers, that if we want to sue a company saying that they are not treating well employees in the company, I think that we just need to go to that website in the UK and we will gather the information because they may publish that. And just to clarify, and that's a linguistic problem, I'm not referring to 215, I am referring to 250 employees, okay? So 250 employees. That's the workforce that you need to have to have the obligations. So UK started doing that in 2017. What about France? They published a new regulation in 2018, and since 2020, they have created what they call the Index de l'égalité professionnelle. Basically, companies need to pass a kind of exam, right? And they get an overall mark saying your mark on the equality index payment is blah, blah, blah. And if you are under the threshold of that mark, you are in trouble and you need to review your gender policy pay within the company. Italy, that new regulation was published in December 2021. And again, that new law encouraged companies to review the procedures on equal pay. And what about Spain? Spain, I think that we have gone beyond all the steps that were done in Europe, because every single company in Spain needs to have a wage registry, meaning that you need to have an Excel document or whatever saying, those are my positions, that's the average salary for men, that's the average salary for female, and therefore, if we have a difference of more than 25%, we need to provide grounds on why we have that difference. So let's say that since 2015, 2017, the European Union was encouraging countries to take measures, and we are seeing in the vast majority of countries of the European Union that we are like focusing on that. And when it comes to Spain, remember, all companies need to have a wage registry. All companies with a workforce of more than 50 employees, 50 employees, need to have a salary audit, which is an even more complicated issue than the wage registry, because you need to assign a value to each working position, and you need to make sure that you are paying equally to all the employees. And then I will discuss, I will explain you what is the famous equality plan, which is basically the thing on what all companies in Spain are focusing. Because basically, if you have more than 50 employees, you need to have an equality plan, which is a document that establishes the measure that you need to implement in the company to ensure that you are compliant with the regulations, and to make sure that you are taking actions to avoid discrimination and to make sure that there is a equality in the companies. So there is a lot of work to do in Europe nowadays.
Wow, it's really like a lot of being done. I mean, I just want to make for the audience something clear. When you were referring to this obligation to report, you were referring to companies that have more than 250 employees, just in Spain, or in the
that depends on the country. That depends on the country. So okay. I'm clear on the fact that the UK is for companies over 250. In Spain, no matter what's the workforce, you need to have the wage registry. then the salary audit is for employees, for companies with more than 50 employees. And then in France, there is another threshold. So I'm not very clear on the threshold because gathering all that information is quite complex.
No, it's a lot of information and you are covering a lot of countries. So yeah, I saw in the chat that there was like that specific question about that.
But
so
let me check
I
that.
wanted to make it clear right now.
But while Angela and Sofía tell us what's going on in Mexico and in the US, I will try to figure out what's the specific threshold in all the countries.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jose. That was really insightful. So, Sofía, how are things in Mexico regarding this issue of equal pay, diversity, inclusion?
Thank you, Mercedes. I'm so excited and honored to be here with you. I hope you enjoy the webinar as much as we do. I would like to address your last question first regarding diversity and inclusion. Here in Mexico, Mexico is a member of the United Nations and also of the International Labor Organization. So it has recognized in its constitution that all human beings has the same equal fundamental rights, regardless their race, their nationality, their religious beliefs or political beliefs, social or economic position, health or disabilities. And as a member of these organizations, Mexico has ratified at least 6 international agreements, among other labor conventions that protect minority groups and also that promote equal treatment and non-discrimination. So to be consistent with these international commitments, we have several federal labor statutes that, well, not all of them are labor statutes. I mean, it's several federal statutes that protects minority groups, regardless, individuals with disabilities, gender, to eliminate all kind of discrimination against women and ethnic groups. So we have a private employment law that regulates any kind of employment relationship between a private employer and employee. And the main obligation that this law imposes to an employer is that it has to promote equal treatment regardless all its employees, notwithstanding any protected category, and also has to pay the same salaries to all individuals for the same equal job. However, I think even if Mexico has ratified the International Labor Convention on Equal Treatment since 1965, and the USMCA that is in force requires employer not to discriminate any employees, and also we have the secondary regulation that requires employers to pay the same salary to everyone, we still find some forms of discrimination against women and any other minority group that prevents to access and develops themselves around the world, around the workplace. So, for example, and this will address your first question regarding to equal payment. There are some relevant facts. For example, big companies in Mexico, only 4.2% of big companies have women that performs executive positions. And the World Economic Forum has ranked Mexico in the position of 128 out of 150 in regard of terms of inequality salary. So from these facts, you can conclude that even we have a legal regulation, it has not been enough because we need to do more. This legal system has to be more effective because, as opposed Susan or Jose was telling us and sharing with us that in some countries there are board requirements and requires employment to disclose some information. Here in Mexico, it's not the case, actually. So we have our congressmen and among other senators are being worried about this issue. So they have at least introduced like 13 bills that will impact other several statutes that are promoting equal treatment among individuals and also they are introducing two important changes. One, the first of all, is that they are prohibiting employer to ask about potential candidates' salary background. And the second main change that they are promoting is also that employers are legally required to disclose if there's any gender gap in their workplace. So I think all these initiatives are being discussed in the floor. Any of them has passed, but at least we know that our congressmen are aware of this necessity and that we have to keep pushing, because even if the key, I really agree with Jose, because the key is not about the diversity, it's about giving equal treatment to all the individuals regardless their circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Sophia, so much.
And you know what, I mean, Sophia, you're right. In my opinion, and we discussed this in the past, countries like Mexico, we need to create a culture in D&I or ESG, whatever, from the companies, not only from the laws, because our regulation is not the best. Angelica, I don't know if you can let us know how is a global company like Uber working with this. I mean, as I mentioned, I think that it's important for the audience to know what is a company like Uber, a global company like Uber, implementing policies, how the new trends, etc., from the D&I side and from the HR side, which is different than the law side that we discussed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very interesting hearing all the different regulations around the world. Actually, I would like to bring a different perspective here in terms of the manage in inside companies. I mean, when analyzing equal employment payment trends in our organizations, right now the best practice and the gold standard is deploying the right analytic tools. And what is this? It's basically reviewing and really understanding our.
Oops, I think that we. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, let me exemplify this. For instance, you may see the difference between or considering gender, like men and women. But what about layering in this information other demographics? For instance, what happens if we consider gender plus ethnicity or other different national region? How this may move the needle? What happens if on top of gender, national origin, or ethnicity, we layer top management positions? And what happens if we layer on top of those a caregiver status, such as a paternity or maternity status? How the needle moves once again, right? So my recommendation from an HR standpoint, it's then again deploying our right analytic tools as a company to really understand how are we internally and be able to identify and analyze those gaps and see and create tailored plans basically that are again tailored to address the specific needs of our populations. And if we do identify that we have gaps, then make specific actions to address those. And absolutely, this is a practice that we have been doing in companies for a while now, especially at large companies in many different segments. Such one of that are advanced. It's obviously, and I don't want to say obviously, but the tech industry has made great advancements in this field, but also financial and health institutions. And these are practices that we have been adopting for years now. And this is also very important because then we stop talking just about diversity, because diversity lives within our employees inside the organization, and we start like walking the talk towards inclusion and equity that are other aspects that we need to balance with diversity policies, right? So yeah, regarding equal payment, I would like for you to consider and to take this in consideration. Another question that this poses is how we gather this information for employees, how we launch self-identification campaigns to be able to request this information, how we keep this information, how we protect this information given the sensitivity of it. And for sure, my advice would be for you to consult your legal partners for launching this sort of campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, Angelica, just to know, I mean, we have a question from the audience. If you have any specific tool that you use in Uber that you can recommend. But another question is, do you have some policies like Susan mentioned the board requirements that is now regulated in the US? I know that California has a different ruling in labor matters, but do you have internal policies regarding, I don't know, underrepresented groups to be protected, how to protect them, and etc.?
Yes, we have plenty of them, but regarding specific about equal payment, I guess that we start following compliance regulations and we start building on that, right? So basically right now, I would say that the gold standard, not at Uber, but in several different companies, it's actually launching this, what I'm saying, which is self-identification campaigns to be able to identify gaps that are above and beyond regulations. And it's layering different types of underrepresented groups into the same equation to be able to identify other sort of gaps within organizations.
Thank you.
So this is basically the gold standard.
Thanks a lot. Mercedes, now it's your turn.
Thank you, boss. Thank you, boss. No, there's like an issue that it's been like triggering my mind for quite a while. Let's say in Argentina, there are lots of principles, constitutional principles and regulations towards granting equal opportunities to all employees under equal treatment. And even the government and the Ministry of Labor had created institutions try to promote this and try to make be more awareness of inclusion and diversity. But for me, there is a conflict with the unions because in South America, the unions are very strong and they have a very they are very powerful and they kind of, in a way, they kind of run a country in 50%. I mean, almost everything like labor and employment decisions depends on the union criteria and the union reactions towards salary increases, granting working conditions. But I haven't seen, and I have done some research, I haven't seen anything from unions representative that will be addressed in order to fight for a more equal treatment in terms of equal pays or like promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I mean, I've gone through like at least 50 or 60 collective bargaining agreements, and I have not seen one single provision that will, in a way, try to commit companies or employees from a certain sector or industry promote or put in place policies or have like reporting obligations like the ones Jose was mentioning towards disclosing how are their policies then of equal pay or equal benefits or equal compensation rights, caregiving rights, so on and so forth. So I'm really nosy. I know that the US has it's not that unions are not that strong, but I'm really nosy and curious how Spain and Mexico, what do you see in terms of unions awareness in this topic? Jose?
Okay, thank you, Mercedes. So that's the main question nowadays in Spain, because we are seeing something crazy with trade unions. So just to give you, let me become like for 30 seconds historical. So in 1983, we created in Spain what is called the Instituto de las Mujeres, so the Institute for Women. So that's something that was there, and I think that nobody knew that existed, but over the last years, that became very, very important. And in 2008, so 2008, for the first time in Spain, we created the Ministry of Equality, el Ministerio de Igualdad. And basically, you have the economic ministry, you have the health ministry, and now we have a Ministerio de Igualdad. So the government really took really serious equality in Spain. So since 2008, we are seeing that equality is being very, 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 very important in Spain. And then that's the beginning. But then we have that new government that has been in the government for 3 years, more or less. And basically, the main goal of the new government is the following. When it comes to employment law, or if we have to implement any kind of employment law in Spain to any kind of regulation, rather than publishing a bill or publishing a new regulation, what the government is doing is they call trade unions, they call employees representatives, they arrange a meeting, they arrange, like, let's say on a meeting room, and they have trade unions, employees representative, and the government. And everything that we are seeing now in Spain that is being published, all the new regulation, are the result of the agreements, in some courts, the agreement between the three parties. So the government is saying, I want to regulate fixed-term employment contract. You, trade union, what do you think that is the proposal? You, employers, what is the proposal? And that implies that collective bargaining in Spain is being very important. And basically, when it comes to equality, in 2019, a couple of years ago, a new regulation was published saying that the equality plan was mandatory for all companies with a workforce of more than 50 employees. What happened? That was the main regulation saying, okay, you need to negotiate the equality plan. And we were not quite sure on how we had to negotiate the equality plans, because we thought that, okay, I am obliged to negotiate an equality plan, but if I don't have in my company employees representative, what I'm going to do is to ask my employees to constitute a kind of commission to negotiate that. So imagine that I have to negotiate with you, and I say, Mercedes, Hugo, Angelica, Sofía, Susan, appoint someone to be your representative. We were expecting that. However, the main change is that if you don't have employees representative in your company, you need to call trade unions to negotiate your equality plan. So basically what's going on in Spain nowadays is that equality and the negotiation of the equality plan is becoming a legal procedure very similar to the negotiation of the collective bargaining agreement. So to your question, Mercedes, you were saying, I am a kind of disappointed because in Argentina, I don't really see the engagement of trade unions. In Spain, it's quite the opposite. As we have to call them to negotiate everything, the workload that they are having nowadays, I mean, you call a trade unions nowadays to negotiate an equality plan, and they give you an appointment 3 months later because they have to negotiate so many things that the workload that they have is absolutely crazy. And there is an additional thing. And basically, everything needs to be negotiated. And for the equality plan, you need to have 2 phases. The phase number 1, primera etapa, is called the diagnosis. So you need to do a due diligence on equality in your company. Analyzing the numbers, how many female, how many males, blah, 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 and what is called as well the qualitative information. Do you have a policy to encourage equal pay? Do you have a policy for that, blah, blah? And all the results of the due diligence needs to be negotiated either with the trade unions or with the employees representative that you have in the company. And once you have negotiated with them absolutely everything, you can start negotiating the measure that you are going to implement as an employer in the equality plan. And you need to enroll into a new negotiation with trade unions. So
it's really active.
It's a nightmare, okay, because you need like Even for going to the toilet and have a break, you need to negotiate with 20 people. Can we have a break for a coffee or whatever? So that's very strong procedure on the matter of negotiation. And finally, when you think that everything is over, that's not over, because the equality plan needs to be registered before the labor authority. And that's published on the official Gazette of Spain. So if you're negotiating an equality plan for the whole country, we have that thing that is called Boletín Oficial del Estado. Your equality plan will be negotiated there. And it doesn't mean that you just send an email to the boy, hi guys, please register my equality plan. No, the labor authority will read carefully your equality plan to identify everything and to analyze and to confirm that all the legal requirements that are set forth in the new regulation are met. And if they consider that something is not okay, they will tell you, okay, I will not register you the equality plan. So Mercedes, we have, I mean, Argentina is here and Spain is here. We have trade unions everywhere now in Spain.
Yeah. Well, here it's very, they're very active and very powerful. But I mean, I've seen for the last 20 years, all the union leaders are men, at least here. So what do you see briefly? If you can say it in 2 minutes, Sofía, in Mexico, about unions and their reactions toward diversity, because this is really interesting now, and we need to get going so we can cover the topics.
Yeah, sure. I will be as quick as possible. Yeah, I know, and I agree with you, Mercedes, here. I only know or have only met 2 outstanding union reps that are women. The rest of them are male union reps, so it's a huge difference, right? And also, well, unions do have legal obligations now to promote equal treatment and also non-discrimination. Actually, if they carry on any discrimination act, will be considered an unfair labor practice, and maybe they can lose their registry. Also, they do have they are required to set forth in their statutes or their bylaws that their board will be integrated by the same number of men and women. And even if, and the last point that I would like to highlight is that even if we here in Mexico, we have union activity in some industry, I have never seen that parties are aware of this important issue and negotiate like, for example, in the US, like a specific grievance procedure, how to attend, how to prevent, or how to sanction any employee or supervisor that has carried on in discrimination. So, and more important, in all the renegotiations of CBA that I have participated, there has never a union rep that has raised its hand and say, please show me if there like the information to analyze if there is a gender gap between all my memberships, right? So I think parties and especially unions have to be aware of this importance, and I'm pretty sure that in the following years we're gonna face this in the negotiations of the collective bargaining agreements.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Sofía. So it's your time, my friend Hugo.
Thank you.
Ball next to you.
Summarizing what is happening in Latin America regarding unions, it's a mess. It's a real mess, and we need to change this. But Susan, Angelica, I would like to try to see this like labor lawyers. You are, Susan, and Angelica as a HR or client in this case. Susan, what are your clients looking for at this time in the US regarding D&I, regarding this protection to these underrepresented groups? And Angelica, what are your concerns during this? I mean, I think we can mix these 2 positions, and it will be better for the audience. Susan?
Yeah, I guess, one interesting thing that my clients are seeing lately is that both in RFPs and also investor questionnaires from potential clients and investors, they're asking companies to produce a lot of specifics with respect to their diversity statistics, which makes a lot of companies very nervous. So, here in the US, generally employers will ask on a voluntary basis for people to disclose their gender, their ethnicity, things like that, so that we can report it to the government if you are a contractor, a government contractor, or if you're a large employer. But companies are hesitant to sort of push when they don't receive that information, because the more information you have, right, the better the chance somebody can say, well, as soon as you found out I was gay, I got fired, right? So it's a delicate balance that some of our clients are going through right now. And obviously, as somebody mentioned earlier, it's very confidential information. So even if an employee has indeed disclosed to you their sexual orientation, for example, they may not want you to let potential clients know exactly what their status is. So it's really a very interesting time right now.
Thank you, Angelica.
Sure. From my perspective, I want to bring awareness into another topic that I've been seeing lately. So we have, even if it's a company is a statutory requirement, or it's just because it's a company best practice, but we have put in place several different actions to promote equal employment practices, such as anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. But in general, I want to say that we tend to see less explicit harassment or discrimination examples, and we start seeing more of on a microaggression level. And those microaggressions are a little bit more harder to identify and also to address, because it's not explicit misconduct, right? Mm-hmm. And why is that? So microaggressions are based on stereotypes that are formed through our life experiences. Therefore, we typically see that microaggressions tend to be unintentional and very subtle, yet they impact largely employee morale and engagement, right? Sometimes we can see even them posed as jokes. And let me give you an example of how we can see these at the workplace. Speaking about gender, we can, see a male manager asking female employees to perform tasks that are stereotyped as woman tasks, for instance, coordinating team events or team agendas, or even giving format to a presentation to make it look nicer, right? So these are the examples that we are now seeing as we onboard and we give voice to our URPs or underrepresented communities or more diverse communities. So it's super important to avoid polarizing with these different perspectives and the voices that we're giving to our employees, that we step up and we ensure that having appropriate trainings in our workplaces, such as anti-bias awareness trainings, and also educate on constructive and respectful ways to communicate and to confront microaggressions. And also, and ultimately, speaking about incorporating into our organizations the appropriate channels in which employees can air their concerns, and the company to make appropriate steps as well to address employees' concerns in these matters in a way that it's safe, and that companies put in place these procedures considering protecting policies such as non-retaliation policies and confidentiality policies, and also to have in these departments people that are qualified to conduct this kind of review process. And this can be either conducted by employee relations teams or even by external lawyers, for sure.
What is constant here is that labor lawyers, we will have a lot of work. How do you think, Mercedes, on that regard?
Yeah, we do have a lot of work. So it was really interesting when we were discussing this previously in our conversations. Like, what's the U.S. positions in terms, like, what do you see? Like, what is the practice in terms of promoting inclusion and diversity in terms of hiring, when you hire someone or when you decide to promote someone to a higher position? What is going on, Susan, there?
Yeah, so what's going on in my office is a fire drill, so I hope you can't hear it. I apologize.
Oh, good. Go.
Hopefully, no, it's all good. It's almost done. So I will tell you that some things that folks are doing here in the U.S. With respect to diversity hiring. Companies are doing what they can to cast a wider net and have more diverse candidates, right? Because it's still illegal to hire somebody based on their gender or race or ethnicity, right? But to the extent that we have a wider net, we're looking at different schools, posting jobs in different places than traditionally. Some clients are even looking at providing bigger recruitment bonuses for when people recommend some diverse candidates. Or asking specifically their diverse employees to recommend individuals. Companies are changing the way they're interviewing, right? They are encouraging things like behavioral interviewing so that they're standardized and really it's based on who's going to be the best for the job, not sort of just getting to know you. And because there we see biases, like there's called the like me bias, right? We want to get rid of that. Some companies are even doing things like blind interviews or taking certain information out of resumes so that it's sort of a more clear process and we're not looking at things and either saying yes or no based on the resume, right? I think interestingly, a lot of people are looking at their job advertisements and they're doing things like taking out some gendered concepts, right? So if we're asking for some aggressive salespeople, for example, maybe some women would not respond to that ad and only men would. So maybe taking a word like aggressive out. Several clients are interestingly taking out unnecessary educational and experience requirements to get a broader group of individuals applying for certain jobs. Another thing that companies are using is what we call the Rooney Rule, which was borrowed from the NFL, the National Football League, where you need to have at least one diverse candidate in the mix or need to explain why you don't. Some companies are using AI, artificial intelligence, to increase the diversity.
I think that,
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of different, things that companies are trying to do to sort of shake things up.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I mean, recently, like a law was passed in the city of Buenos Aires, a little bit related to that, to try to eliminate from the resume or the curriculum brief all those things that might lead you to make like a disparate treatment and not consider the objective qualities of a candidate. Yep. So yeah, that's good. Thank you. Sofía, there is something going on around this specific topic about hiring in Mexico.
I would love to say that Mexico is applying all the options that Susan Rose just mentioned, but it's not, unfortunately. Yeah, but the employers are only required if they are through a hiring process, of course, not to discriminate any potential candidates based on the basis of any protected category, and not to ask any additional information other than that it's initially required in the job advertisement or that the job requires to be performed. Also, they are forbidden to make any unjustified distinctions. And what we are recommending to our clients, and I have seen that they have done, is reviewing the job advertisement to eliminate any discrimination keywords or to advertise these jobs in other places, not only in LinkedIn, or maybe sometimes sharing the job advertisement with their folks, with their colleagues, so they can share the job posting in other places, so you can have a higher research or more opportunity to get more people interested in the job. Also using AI. However, sometimes it's a little bit more expensive, but I have seen that some companies have implemented that in the workplace. And finally, I think the most important action that we have to do or promote is to specify the objective elements that the job is requiring, so we can evaluate objectively the best candidate to do the job.
Okay. Thank you, Sofía.
Was Antonio in Spain? Something.
So I think it's the same as Sofía. I would love to say that we are very good on that, but no. So that's clear and straightforward now. What we are seeing in Spain is that we are trying to make a copy paste of US regulation, because that's very American, or at least we see that in our European eyes, saying in all the publication that you see on LinkedIn or on the website, we are an equal employer. We guarantee that we will treat women and females, women and men on the same way. We encourage you to apply to this position if you are Black, Chinese, not from Madrid or whatever. But unfortunately, we don't have any regulation on that. However, what we have in Spain and in Europe is the following. At the European level, we have the European Union platform for diversity charters. So basically, that's a measure that has been published by the European Union, when you can have a look to a charter regarding diversity, and you as a company can apply to that charter, saying, me as a company, blah, 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 I undertake to respect all the commitments of diversity that are foreseen by the European Union. Which is like, okay, why not? And then when it came
to a very general declaration.
Yes, it's absolutely lovely, but enforceable, zero. And then when it came to Spain, we had since 2021 new obligations on diversity. But that's interesting. That's not regulated by employment law. That's regulated by corporate law, which is absolutely surrealistic, because our corporate colleagues keep calling us, Jose, what they have to do because you are the employment lawyer. And I say, yes, no, listen, that's under corporate law. No, Jose, but you are the one. No, so keep calm. So that's diversity. That's a corporate matter. And this is how it's being regulated. So if you are a company in Spain with a workforce of more than 250 employees, you need to include a statement in your annual accounts on how you are managing diversity. Okay, so that's the only thing that we have. And then finally, to conclude, when it comes to diversity, my question to all of you is, what shall we understand by diversity? Because that's so broad. Are we talking to sex orientation? Are we talking about age? Are we talking about gender? We are talking about so many things that some of these things have already specific protection. When it comes to sex or gender, we have all the things regarding the equality plans and all that. When it comes to disabled employees, all the companies that have more than 50 employees need to have at least 2% of the workforce that are disabled. So we have a lot of obligations that are spread here and here, but we don't have a general framework when it comes to diversity. So I think that for the next years, we should survive to the equality plans, we should survive to trade unions in the companies, and we should survive to the negotiation and all that. And I think that in a couple of years, our parliament will become creative and they will pass some new regulations when it comes to diversity.
Thank you. What is clear, Jose Antonio, for me is that in Spain, as in every other country in the world, corporate lawyers always need labor lawyers to understand what they are doing.
It's like a marriage, a successful marriage.
Yeah.
But they don't want to recognize that, because we are always like the employment guys that they always say like no. But since the COVID, we have been able to evidence that we are the key lawyers in all the.
They need us.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
What has happened inside of the companies? I mean, about this promoting work and hiring employees, etc. What are you doing in the global companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of actually of what Susan already brought. However, I would want to add a couple of aspects. And for instance, speaking about the Ronnie rule, which is having at least one diverse candidate, this also, and this is great, right? And this is bringing diversity into the workplace. But then again, my question is, what about inclusion, right? So this requires that companies inside create also diverse interview panels, and that our internal processes are calibrated to understand these differences and to be able to acknowledge and recognize potential biases in order to be able to tackle them, right? So it's not just, we're not just covering by incorporating these rules. Also, another interesting aspect that Susan also mentioned, it's the like me bias, right? And it's we used in the past to have several employee referral programs that they were very, very successful, but we have been seeing how they have been evolving lately. And right now we want to revisit those referral programs and ensure that we don't end up bringing just people that comes from the exact same background, the exact same school, even the exact same religious beliefs, right? Even. So definitely it is super important to revisit those plans internally, because I've seen tons of them in Mexico, in Latin America, and even here in the States, right? That one, it's also one very important. Another one that I think it's interesting for me to mention here is how bringing diversity should be at the core of leadership and manager activities. And usually we've been seeing that leadership goals, performance goals, are also tied to diversity and inclusion goals. And this is also a way we can use to drive change in the organizations. And last but not least, I do want to raise awareness in regards to promotion processes. This is a very specific moment, hiring and promotion, in which we may fall in discrimination or discriminatory practices, right? These are those two very sensitive moments in we may incur in these sort of actions. And let me give you an example of this. Probably passing on hiring a woman because she's pregnant, right? This is a very, very like typical example. And I want you to picture this. You have your recruiting or your candidate pool, and you have 3 candidates, and 2 of them are women. One is a male. One of the women is pregnant, and the other one is not. They all share the right skill set, the right competencies for the role, and you end up not hiring and not hiring the pregnant woman, right? So we need to be very, very careful when we are making this sort of analysis, because it's the line. It's thin. It's thin. Yeah. So yeah. These are some aspects I can add to what was already said.
Thank you very much, Angelica. And you're right, it's very thin. The line is very thin, and we have to be very clear and very careful with all of these matters that we have to conclude. Let me try to conclude, and I will give you to each of you 2 minutes for your conclusions, remarks. I have here 2 ideas that I would like to share for conclusions. The first one is we need to create and to the culture to D&I. We need to improve everything that we are doing. We need to implement whatever we need to implement in order to grow these issues. As Sofía mentioned, what is diversity? What is diversity and inclusion? We need to work harder in order to push companies, governments, employees, unions, to be part of this process. I'm pretty sure that it will never stop, and hopefully we can run faster in this place, in these matters. The other idea for me that I allow to do this is that unions, what Mercedes mentioned in Argentina, I think is not an obligation of a union leaders. It's an obligation of the employer, union leaders and workers to create and to implement and to put inside of the CBAs this regulation or these policies. If not, nobody's going to do it. We need to work together. We need to work as just one team in order to create this culture and to implement all this process. Now I'm going to be quiet, please. Susan, if you can let us know your conclusions, please.
Yeah, and I guess my first one kind of adds on to what you were saying, Hugo. I do think that it's, aside from the companies themselves, companies are even getting pressure from the outside, right? From investors, from clients, from shareholders, other stakeholders demanding some diversity. So I think that's another source of the demand that at least we're seeing here in the US. So I think that will help too. I will add sort of one other, concluding thought, which is what is making some employers here in the US a little nervous with respect to the remote working, right, option that has really, come out of the pandemic. That there's a fear here that because of caregiving obligations, more women than men might take advantage of the opportunity to work remotely. And I think a lot of companies are getting afraid that those women who are going to be working remotely will sort of be what we say here, out of sight, out of mind, right? So when it comes time to staff an important deal or for promotions, that the women are just not going to be there, and a man is going to get promoted or put on that important deal, and we're going to set ourselves back from some of the gains that we've been making over the past couple of years with respect to women here in the US. So I think companies are really trying to pay attention to that and try to not let that happen.
Thank you very much, Susan. Jose Antonio?
I think that I will not take more than 1.5 minutes. So my key messages are the following. Please, if you have more than 50 employees, call an employment lawyer in Europe, either in the UK, in France, in Italy. Like I didn't focus in countries like in Belgium, Luxembourg, or Germany, because I'm not familiar with those countries. But please, reporting obligations on equal pay are becoming very important. In Spain, if you are on breach of that, you can have real issues. For instance, if you don't have in Spain the equality plan, or if you don't have the equal pay reporting, for instance, you can be forbidden to enter into contract with the public sector. So imagine that your main client is the state, and you are forbidden to have any kind of contract with them because you are not compliant with your equality obligation. So please focus on that, focus on equal pay. And if you are in Spain, focus on the equality plan issues. And then it's very nice that we have Susan here because the US is ahead of Europe on diversity. So let's do something horrible, but let's do copy paste of what the US is doing. We will copy as best as we can what you are doing, Susan, because in a couple of years, potentially we will be in the same page. However, please focus on that because that's not only good for your company, because you became like an inclusive employer, you guarantee equal pay, you guarantee the right of female, males, etc. But also that's also a key issue for the company and you'll be in trouble. So that's my recommendation. And I hope that in a couple of years, we can discuss again about diversity. And Sofía, I hope that Mexico and Spain, we will have something more to say on that. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, and I do hope too that, South America, if you guys, Europe, are like a couple of years behind, just imagine us, like we have to speed up on that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Exactly.
Angelica, please.
Sure. I think that's something important to call out. It's the difference between the regulations, but also there's a difference of what companies are doing, right? Like we have, of course, the obligation to comply, but we have been seeing the transformational effect of diversity and inclusion, which also even about Spain or about Argentina, where most of transnational companies operate in these companies with these standards that we're mentioning here. So we also need to push forward for this with also this in mind. But another couple aspects I would want to close out and conclude, it's one, ensure representation of your diverse talent. And it's not just this, it's advancing employees on executive, management, technical, and board roles, and go above and beyond gender and ethnicity. We have broadly spoken about gender and ethnicity, but we have several other URPs that need to be and to have representation, such as caregivers, such as immigrants. And now we're seeing this as I am myself an immigrant in the States, right? So it is important, and it's part of diversity, and foremost, it's part of inclusion. Place leaders and managers at the heart of your DEI efforts. We need our voices in our companies to drive this change, and it's super important to engage them and to ask accountability for all the levels of the organization. As said, promote openness and tackle microaggressions. This is also a very important one. And last, foster belonging and support for diverse groups. One excellent of doing this, it's by funding your employee resource groups, your ERGs, and also to broaden these groups, again, not just to gender and ethnicity, do it for disability status, for LGBTQI+, caregivers, religion beliefs, immigrants. There's several different ways to talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. Sofía, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that you will agree with me, but I think that Mexico, even if that we have a regulation that's enforced, Mexico has or must keep pushing hard to have a better and effective legal system that requires employers to comply with all the regulation, and not only to avoid penalties, more to give employees a better place to work, because I am a strong believer that personnel is one of the most important assets of the company. So it has been proved that discrimination or unequivalent treatment or pay is a kind of violence that affects physical, emotional, and psychological demands of our employees. So we have to be very careful. We have to speak, we have to be aware. We don't have to be afraid to talk about this topic. In our house, in our own workplace. I know that you, all of you, or most of you runs law firms, and this is a special sector that we have to look into, because we have to put and tackle a lot of issues that sometimes we're not aware, and we have to promote diversity and inclusion, not only for women, for all individuals. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sofía. Now we can pass the voice to Mercedes for the Q&A section.
Yeah, thank you, Hugo. Well, some of them we addressed it like while we were our presenters were speaking. So I think the one that is left is like in your jurisdictions, does unions have requests for file claims to ask for inclusion and diversity policies? I think not in my jurisdiction, not in Argentina. As I was saying, unions. I agree with Hugo that this is a job. Inclusion and diversity is a job for all the players within the labor scenario. But hearing the unions be a little more concerned about this issue, I'm sure that we will raise more awareness on the employers and on the companies to put in place policies towards that. Not maybe not at the speed that Europe is doing it or the US is doing it, but let's just try to begin and keep the role going. So that's the only question we have so far. The other ones we were addressed, and you can address this from your perspective in Europe or in US or Mexico. We have like 5 more minutes. So jump in, whoever wants to say something about this.
I think that there is another question regarding the job of trade unions. And when it comes to that, I just want to clarify something. Regarding the claims in Spain, I think it was in 2021, we had a decision of the Supreme Court of the Tribunal Supremo, basically on the negotiation of the equality plan. Because if you remember, what I said is that company were keen to negotiate with the employees. So you don't have employees representative, you would rather prefer to appoint a representative within your employees rather than calling the trade unions to negotiate that equality plan. So what the Supreme Court says in one company is that from now and with the new regulations, if you don't have employees representative, if you don't have a workers' council, or you don't have an employees staff or whatever, you need to call trade union. So it is mandatory, and yes, we are having the Spain litigation on that. And the second question that was raised is whether is the company the one that should be proactive on the promotion of negotiation with trade unions, and I think that it's really important for companies to be proactive, because then if the trade unions decide not to negotiate the equality plan or whatever, they will not get a fine. But if the employer is not compliant with the obligation, they will be the ones that will get the fine. So you will rather wake up and negotiate with the trade union and insist to call them to negotiate, rather than being passive and doing nothing. At least that would be the perspective from Spain.
Thank you, Jose. Well, I don't know if anybody wants to add something, or there is no more questions. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being there behind the screen, listening to us. Thank you to the American Bar Association, to ANADE, to our great speakers here, my co-moderator. I see me like in Spanish, my co-moderator, because I was trying to switch both, invent an inclusive language here. So thank you so much. It was great having you here.
Thank you, Mercedes. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.